I walked into a 220 square foot house, expecting to feel trapped. Instead, I felt something I did not expect at all. I felt free. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why. Because what I found inside this tiny home broke almost everything I thought I knew about small spaces. Before we go inside, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because I'm about to show you the exact design tricks, the real 2026 costs, and the honest downsides nobody talks about. And trust me, you want to see the layout reveal near the end, because it completely changes how this house feels from the inside. Let's get into it. A few months ago, I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment that felt, honestly, empty. Big rooms, not enough life in them. I kept hearing about the tiny home movement online, seeing these gorgeous little cabins with wood interiors and skylights, and I thought, that's probably just a highlight reel. Real life in a tiny home has to be cramped, awkward, and honestly kind of miserable. So I decided to find out for myself. I spent time in a real tiny home, talked to the people who live in one full time, and dug into the actual data on where this movement stands right now, in 2026. And what I learned surprised me enough that I had to make this video. Because here's the thing, tiny homes are not a niche hippie experiment anymore. The global tiny homes market is valued at close to $24 billion this year, and it's expected to keep climbing over the next decade. That is not a fringe trend. That is a real shift in how people are choosing to live. The first thing that hit me wasn't the size. It was the light. Big windows, a skylight over the sleeping loft, and warm wood tones on almost every surface. The owner told me something that stuck with me. People assume tiny means dark and boxed in. It's actually the opposite. When every inch matters, you stop wasting space on hallways and start spending it on light. That's the first myth this house destroyed for me. I always pictured tiny homes as dim, narrow little boxes. This one felt more open than some studio apartments I've lived in, and it's a fraction of the size. Walking through the front door, you're immediately in the living and kitchen area. No wasted entryway, no dead space. The kitchen has a 2-burner induction cooktop, a compact fridge that's somehow bigger than it looks, and open shelving instead of bulky cabinets. It's efficient without feeling sterile. There are plants on the windowsill, a stack of books by the couch, real signs of a life being lived here, not just a showroom. Here's where it got interesting for me, because I wanted to know the actual mechanics of how you make 220 square feet feel like enough. Trick 1, vertical living. The sleeping loft sits above the kitchen and bathroom, which means the square footage of the ceiling essentially gets doubled. You're not adding size, you're stacking function. Trick 2, multi-purpose furniture. The dining table folds flat against the wall when it's not in use. The stairs leading to the loft double as drawers. Every single step pulls open to reveal storage. Nothing in this house does just one job. Trick 3, sight lines. This one's subtle, but it might be the most important. The designer avoided walls that block your view across the space. Even though the bathroom is enclosed for privacy, everything else flows into one continuous sight line from the front door to the back window. Your eyes travel further than your feet do, and that alone tricks your brain into feeling like there's more room than there actually is. And this isn't just a one-off idea from one clever builder. This is exactly where the tiny home industry has been heading throughout 2026. The current wave of design is less about cramming furniture into a box and more about livability first. Builders are focusing on layouts that could function as a genuine primary residence, not just a weekend novelty, with many new models now built to meet residential codes, so they could be legally lived in full-time rather than treated as a temporary structure. Now, if you're thinking this all sounds a little too perfect, stay with me, because in a few minutes I'm going to show you the honest, uncomfortable parts of tiny home living that almost nobody puts in their videos. Things like what happens when you have guests over, what the bathroom situation is actually like, and the one design choice the owner told me she'd change if she started over. So don't click away yet, because that part is where this video gets real. Let's talk numbers, because this is usually where people either get excited or get skeptical, and you deserve the honest version. In 2026, a tiny home typically runs somewhere between $10,000 and $30,000, which can make it up to roughly 90% cheaper than a conventional house. That's a staggering gap. For comparison, the median price of a traditional single-family home in most parts of the country is still sitting well into the hundreds of thousands. But, and this is important, That price range assumes a basic build. The moment you start adding solar power, custom cabinetry, high-end appliances, or a fully off-grid water system, costs climb fast. The home I toured, with its custom woodwork and upgraded insulation, landed closer to the higher end of that range. So when you see a tiny home advertised at $10,000, understand that's the shell, not necessarily the finished dream house you're picturing. There's also a stat that really puts things in perspective. Prefabricated and modular tiny homes have exploded in popularity across North America, with tens of thousands sold in just the past 2 years, now making up the majority of total tiny home sales. That tells you something. People aren't necessarily building these from scratch in their backyard with a YouTube tutorial anymore. They're buying factory-built units, which means quality control, faster move-in times, and frankly, fewer horror stories about DIY plumbing gone wrong. Okay, here's a part of this story that almost got left on the cutting room floor, but I think it's the single most important thing you need to know if a tiny home has ever crossed your mind. Roughly 40% of urban municipalities still impose zoning or regulatory restrictions on tiny homes. That means in a huge portion of cities, you legally cannot just drop a tiny home on a lot and live in it. Some places classify them as accessory dwelling units, which opens doors. Some places don't recognize them at all, which closes doors fast. The owner I spoke with told me she spent almost as much time researching zoning laws as she did researching floor plans. Her exact words were something like, "I fell in love with the design before I understood the paperwork, and the paperwork almost stopped me." That is a sentence I think more people need to hear before they get swept up in the aesthetic of it all. So if this video has you dreaming about a tiny home of your own, please do the boring homework first. Check your local zoning laws. Check whether your area allows accessory dwelling units. And talk to a local building department before you fall in love with a floor plan on Pinterest. This is the part one promised you earlier. The honest, unfiltered side of tiny home living. First, privacy. If you live with a partner, there is genuinely nowhere to go when you need space. The owner told me that during an argument, you can't storm off to another room and slam a door because there basically isn't another room. You either work through it or you go outside. She said it forced her and her partner to actually communicate instead of avoiding each other, which she now sees as a strange kind of blessing. But she was honest that it took adjustment. Second, guests. Hosting more than 2 or 3 people at once is genuinely difficult. There's no spare bedroom, no overflow seating, and, depending on the layout, sometimes not even enough counter space to set out a proper spread of food. If you love hosting big dinner parties, a tiny home is going to change that part of your life significantly. Third, and this one surprised me, the bathroom. Many tiny homes use a wet bath, meaning the shower, toilet, and sink all share one small enclosed room without a separate shower stall. It's efficient, but it takes getting used to. Some newer builds are separating these zones better, but it's still one of the most common adjustment points for new owners. And fourth, decision fatigue around belongings. Every single item you bring into a tiny home has to earn its place. The owner told me she does a one-in, one-out rule. If she buys something new, something old has to leave. It sounds simple, but she admitted it was one of the hardest habits to build, because most of us are used to just accumulating things without ever really confronting how much we actually own. Here's a piece of this that I didn't expect to care about as much as I ended up caring about. Tiny homeowners, on average, consume significantly less than people in traditional-sized homes. Some estimates put it at over 50% less, which naturally shrinks both their carbon footprint and their monthly utility bills. Smaller space simply means less to heat, less to cool, and less to light. On top of that, 2026 has brought a wave of smart technology built specifically for compact living. AI-driven scheduling systems that manage heating, cooling, and lighting automatically have reportedly cut monthly electricity costs by somewhere around 18 to 25% for off-grid, tiny home residents who've adopted them. Compact appliances designed specifically for small footprints are also saving meaningful amounts of interior space compared to standard-size versions, without sacrificing what they can actually do. There's also a quieter shift happening with water. Some builders are designing roof catchment systems that, in higher rainfall regions, can collect thousands of gallons of water annually from a roof that's only a couple hundred square feet. For anyone drawn to true off-grid living, that's a genuinely useful piece of the puzzle. None of this makes a tiny home a perfect environmental solution on its own. But when you add it up, less material to build it, less energy to run it, and smarter systems managing what energy it does use, it's a meaningfully lighter footprint than most of us are used to living with. I think there's a myth that tiny homes are only for a very specific type of person, an off-grid minimalist, or a retiree looking to downsize. But the data doesn't really support that narrow picture. Surveys have found that more than half of Americans say they'd be willing to live in a tiny home, and that number climbs even higher among younger adults. Millennials specifically have shown strong interest, with a solid majority saying they consider a smaller home given the right circumstances. That's not a fringe interest group. That's a meaningful chunk of an entire generation rethinking what home even needs to look like. At the same time, tiny homes still make up a very small sliver of total housing sales in major cities, a couple of percentage points in places like New York, for example. So there's a real gap between how many people say they're open to the idea and how many people have actually taken the leap. Some of that gap comes down to zoning we talked about earlier. Some of it comes down to simply not knowing where to start. Okay, we're getting close to the most important part of this whole video. So if you made it this far, stick with me for just a bit longer, because I'm about to show you the one moment inside this house that genuinely changed how I think about small spaces forever. It's not a design trick. It's not a statistic. It's something the owner said to me standing in her own kitchen, and it's the reason I decided to make this video in the first place. Toward the end of my visit, I asked the owner the question I've been building up to the whole time. Do you ever regret it? Do you ever wish you just bought a normal house? She paused for a second, looked around the room, and said something like this. I used to think a big house meant a big life. More rooms, more stuff, more space to fill. But most of that space just sat empty, collecting things I didn't need. Here, every single square foot has a job. Nothing is wasted, including my time, because I'm not spending my weekends cleaning rooms I never use. That hit me harder than I expected, because if you think about it, most of us don't actually use most of our homes most of the time. We have guest rooms that sit empty for months, formal living rooms nobody sits in, closets full of things we forgot we owned. A tiny home doesn't just shrink your square footage. It forces an honest conversation about what you actually need versus what you've just been carrying around out of habit. That doesn't mean a tiny home is the right answer for everyone. It's not. Some people genuinely need more space for kids, for work, for hobbies that take up room. But it made me rethink the assumption that bigger is automatically better. Sometimes bigger just means more to manage, more to clean, more to pay for, and more empty corners you never actually use. Before I wrap this up, I asked the owner one more honest question. If she could go back and change one thing about her tiny home, what would it be? Her answer was the loft ceiling height. In her build, the sleeping loft only has about 3.5 feet of headroom above the mattress. It's fine for sleeping, but she can't sit up fully without hitting her head, and she said if she'd build again, she'd either raise the roofline slightly or move the bedroom to the ground floor and turn the loft into storage instead. It's a small detail, but it's exactly the kind of thing you only learn by actually living somewhere, not just looking at photos of it online. That's the value of talking to real owners instead of just watching polished home tours. The polished version shows you the dream. The honest version shows you the trade-offs. And if you're seriously considering a tiny home for yourself, you need both. So, did this tiny home change the way I see small spaces? Genuinely, yes. Not because it made small spaces look glamorous, but because it made me question why I ever assumed bigger automatically meant better. This house wasn't perfect. It had real trade-offs around privacy, guests, and headroom. But it was intentional in a way most homes, including mine, simply aren't. If you're considering a tiny home in 2026, here's the honest summary. Expect to pay somewhere between $10,000 and $30,000 for a basic build. Expect that number to climb with upgrades. Check your local zoning laws before you fall in love with a floor plan, and go in with realistic expectations about privacy and hosting guests. Do all of that, and a tiny home might genuinely be one of the smartest housing decisions you ever make. If this video gave you a new way of looking at small spaces, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who are asking the same questions I was asking a few months ago. And if you want to see more honest, unfiltered tours like this one, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. I've got a few more tiny homes lined up to visit, including one that's completely off-grid, and I think you're going to want to see how they solve the water and power situation. Drop a comment and let me know. Could you actually live in a space this small? I read every single one, and I'll pick a few of your questions to answer in the next video. Thanks so much for watching this. Stay curious, stay honest about what you actually need, and I'll catch you so soon.